Hey guys, Alterac Valley is coming out very soon, and today I'm going to give you guys a few decks to keep an eye out for once the expansion launches. These are a couple decks that have theory crafted since the cards have been revealed, and I think they have some potential in the hopefully slightly slower meta once the expansion comes out. So let's hop right in. Okay, so first up we have Deathrattle Priest. There's a lot of Deathrattle support that has been printed. Well, relatively a lot. We've seen 2 Spirit Guides come out, some Disciples. I'll go over what all of these cards kind of do, but basically there's been some more Deathrattle support, and with the new Xyrella Hero card, it looks like a slightly slower control type Priest can kind of exist. However, it does have a win condition, so to speak, whereas, I mean, old Priest also had win conditions, but it was really slow and grindy, and this will still have value, and the games will go on longer, but Xyrella's, the hero's new hero power will actually be able to close out games. So let's talk about what's in this deck. Similar to the previous control priest deck, we have cards like Wand Maker, we have Scorpid, stuff to discover more things. Basically, we're running Palm Reading, Renew, Raise It to bring them back. Something I thought might be a good addition is Defiance Leper. There's enough shadow spells in the deck that you can actually activate this and play this for tempo against board-centric matchups. Devouring Plague I have as some removal as well in case of slightly more aggressive decks. This is really efficient at dealing with a couple of early minions on board or one medium-sized minion. We have Gift of the Nara, which is one of the new cards that's come out. Restore 3 health to all characters. If any are damaged still, draw a card. Good if you're under pressure, just to cycle cards. Good to heal some other stuff up. It's another way to activate Xyrella as well. This is a card I'm not sure about being in the list, but I think it might be okay in there, especially with more cheap cards discounted from Palm Reading. It's really good to be able to cheat out mana like that. Amulet of Dying is something we've seen in the Dead Minds mini sets. Tradable, resurrect 1 friendly Deathrattle minion, and when you trade it, it upgrades to summon 2 and then 3 and so on and so forth. So we have some Deathrattles in the deck, some very specific ones, and you'll see we're not running stuff like Call of the Grave because we want to make sure that the things we're resurrecting with the amulet are defensive minions that, you know, still have decent bodies. So when you summon 3 or 4 at once, you're still going to kill some people with it, but primarily they have defensive aspects to them so that you can, you know, stay alive against the decks that are trying to kill you, against decks that are trying to kill you. I still have some Hysterias in here, and let's go now over the Deathrattle minions. Lightshare Elemental we've seen before, but we now have 2 Spirit Guides. Spirit Guide is Taunt, Deathrattle. You know what, let's just click on it. Taunt, Deathrattle, draw a holy spell and a shadow spell. Priest has been missing card draw for quite a while, which is one of the reasons we've gone towards sort of value generation in previous expansions when we had Control Priest. This is fine. Stat-wise, it's not insane, but drawing a Holy Spell and a Shadow Spell is pretty fine. It has Taunt, and it can be rezzed immediately on turn 6 with Amulet of Dying if you really want to just go 5 Spirit Guide into an Amulet, and that's fine. Card draw is good. There's not that many Holy Spells in the deck. It's just Renew and Gift of the Nara, so you're basically curating something pretty good. There's a lot more shadow spells, and again, that's why Leper, I think, could be in the deck right now. But you're basically guaranteed to have one of these healing spells to be able to use with Xyrella if you have Spirit Guide die. Light Shower we've talked about, and this is the other new Deathrattle minion. Undying Disciple, Taunt, Deathrattle, deal damage equal to this minion's attack to all enemy minions. This is actually really similar to like a Tunnel Blaster card that we've seen before. It's a neutral 7-mana 3/7. The difference is this can be buffed and can do more damage, but mainly it comes out a turn earlier, and it kind of fits the whole play defensive sort of theme. So you can just hide behind taunts after taunts and so on. And this might be less scary of a minion to res than something like a Morg Forge Fiend, but I think Forge Fiends are still a little too slow. We might see Forge Fiends come in if people try to run a Zoth and have a much more value-oriented deck. But, and this is what we're coming to, with the new hero card Xyrella, Battlecry, trigger the Deathrattle of every friendly minion that died this game. Now, all of your friendly minions are defensive, so we're not like dealing damage with Deathrattles or anything. You're getting health back with Lightshare Elemental. You're drawing cards with the 5-mana taunt and doing an AoE if you've had an Undying Disciple die. But the more important, I mean, this is still a pretty good effect, but also your hero power becomes restore 5 or deal 5, and this flips every turn. So you know exactly every 2 turns you'll be able to deal 5, every 2 turns you'll be able to heal 5. Can go face as well. And this is kind of your finisher, right? Over the course of theoretically 12 turns, if they don't have any healing, they just die to this. theoretically, you're going to have tempo as well with minions. You're going to res stuff with Amulet of Dying. You'll be able to find other stuff. Maybe you discover Draconic stuff. You'll have ways to do chip damage, but this will be able to let you close out the game, so you don't need huge finishers. And honestly, something like an Amulet of the Dying will be more than enough against some decks, right? You just deal with the early tempo, stay alive, and then flip it back on them with either an Amulet or something else. And this is kind of what I've built for Deathrattle Priest. It might look a little bit different once the expansion comes out, but generally slower control decks are very difficult to build before you know what the meta looks like, because a lot of the removal that you're running is meta dependent. Do I need to run small board clears, or do I need to run Condemn? Are there a lot of token decks running around? So this might not be exactly what it looks like in the final sort of iteration, but I think this is a very good start to look at once the expansion launches. All right, next up we have Buff Paladin. Now, we've had Buff Paladin now in the meta as well, but with some of the new tools that have come out, I think there are 6 new cards in this deck, or 7. Not a huge change, but still enough that I think it'll be kind of cool. You'll see a lot of cards like before: Knight of Anointment, Righteous Protector, Pack Mule, Hand of Adal, Margurgle, Noble Mount, Skulker, Bannerman. These are kind of all the same. Blade Master, Carriel, the Squawkers, the Authorities, a Battle Master close up the game, and Smite. Previously lists were running 2 Battleground Masters, and I think you could still do that if you want to go for a more aggressive build, but I've included a copy of Carriel here, A, a little bit for fun, but B, maybe it actually ends up being good. Maybe this deck has a bit more staying power now because of Carriel, and you get, you know, I guess let's go over Carriel. Battlecry, deal 2 damage to all enemies, including face, so it's like a Consecration, and then equip a 2/5 immovable object. So weapon, it doesn't lose durability, and your hero takes half damage, so basically you can just keep punching them in the face after you get Carriel. Your hero power becomes give a random minion in your hand +4/+4. So if you still have minions in your hand at this point, or based on what you draw, you can hero power and then play it every turn, which ends up being bigger than what it normally was. So I think you could include something like this. It might be a little bit too slow for what the deck's trying to do, but I'm not certain. That's the thing. It's hard to theory craft exactly how games play out. So I included a copy of this. If she ends up being too slow, you might end up slotting in another Battle Master. Other new cards: Iron Deep Trog. This is kind of an interesting one. 1 mana 1/2. After your opponent casts a spell, summon a copy of this. So if they cast a spell that doesn't remove the Trog multiplies. Another one pops out, and then with 2, if they cast another spell, 2 more pop out, 1 from each of them. So it propagates pretty aggressively. If you have it buffed with like a Hand of Adal or a Noble Mount, this can get out of control pretty quickly and get very annoying to deal with. That being said, if the spell kills it, then it doesn't spawn, because it says after, not when. Which means that if the spell kills it, the Trog is dead. But I think this has some potential to get out of hand very quickly. This I'm not 100% certain about, and this again will be kind of meta dependent. If we have some spell heavy decks, it might be better to include this. If the meta is a bit more tempo oriented, we might opt to swap this out for some of the stealth package that I have removed from the deck. Other new cards, we have Scythe the Scarlet. This one's actually really nice as well. 3 mana 2/2 rush. Whenever this minion gains attack or health, double that amount. So that means if it gets buffed in your hand, in your deck somehow, or even on the board, the buff gets doubled for both, for the attack and for the health, which is, it's quite good. So for example, if you play this, it sticks, and you coin a Blessing Authority, this becomes an 18/18, which is pretty wild. Getting this buffed in your hand with Bannerman makes it a 3 mana 4/4, which is already kind of good. Getting it buffed with Carriel on hand makes it huge as well. It becomes a 3 mana 10/10 with 1 hero power. Slamming this with a Noble Mount, 3 mana 4/4 Divine Shield Rush. Hand of Adal becomes a 8/6, 5 mana 8/6 rush. So this is pretty solid. Finally, I think these are the other 2 cards. So we've had the 2 Trogs, the Scythe the Scarlet. We're going to have Carriel, it's 4, and then the 2 Stonehearth Vindicators. 3 mana 3/1, Battlecry, draw a spell that costs 3 or less, and it costs 0 this turn only. Pretty good with Hand of Adal and Noble Mount, basically. And you'll see that I've cut Conviction from the deck, because Conviction is not a card you want to draw with Vindicator. It will cost 0 when you draw it, but then you're playing a 3 mana 3/1. Whenever this hits the field, you want to play Hand of Adal on it immediately, or you want to play Noble Mount. There is a new Paladin spell that also buffs and adds Divine Shield to it, but I didn't think it was that useful in general, so I omitted it from the deck. If we end up needing more buffs, that's something we could include to add to either the Vindicator pool or the Net of Anointment to have some extra card draw available. But I think this was enough of a package to run. This plus Noble Mount is just kind of insane. Sticky Minion, draws from your deck, pretty solid. And with the extra draws that we have with Vindicator, Knight of Anointments, Bannerman. I feel like you'll probably get through your deck not super quick, but you know, quick enough that Cariel might just be a consistent finisher depending on how the games play out. Anyways, that is buff Paladin. Next up, we have I don't know what to call this. Token Minion Demon Hunter. I'm not 100% sure about this list because we haven't really had something like this before. There used to be a token-centric Demon Hunter that ran Wrathscale Naga and a bunch of 1/1 rushes that would die and then proc the Wrathscale Naga, which would deal 3 to random enemy, and you'd set up like a cool combo-y type of damage there. This doesn't quite have that because Wrathscale Naga has rotated, but we've got a relatively low curve with some payoff cards for having minions die. And a lot of this deck is actually kind of... there's a lot of new cards in here, but also old cards that we haven't actually seen play with. And let's go over what that exactly looks like. Also, again, these lists are kind of hard to build because I'm not quite sure what's perfect to run, but I think this is, again, a pretty good skeleton to go with. We have some cheap minions here. We got Battle Fiend. I think there should be a second Demon Companion, but I'm not quite sure what to cut yet. We're running 2 of the new weapons, the Dread Prison Glaive. 1/1/3, honorable kill, deal damage equal to your hero's attack to the enemy's hero. So basically you can kill a minion, and if it is an honorable kill, the damage also gets applied to face. The effect isn't as important as the fact that it's a 1/1/3 weapon. This means you can equip it on 1, get some swings out, which leads into Battle Worn Vanguard on 2. 2 mana 2/2. After your hero attacks, summon 2 1/1 Fellwings, and these are just 1/1 demons. Spawning stuff is good. More things die, and it will juice up some of the following cards that we'll be seeing in just a moment. I'm also running a Tusk Piercer with the only Deathrattles in the deck being 2 Renowned Performers for some tempo, and again, spawning some more stuff that will contribute to things dying. We're running Sigil of Summoning, Coordinated Strike, a Ram Commander, something that's new with the Alterac Valley. 2 mana 2/2, Battlecry, add 2 1/1 Rams with Rush to your hand. Kind of slow, but still. You get to play something on curve, and you add some 1/1s to your hand that work pretty nicely. This is one of the payoff cards. Flag Runner, 3 mana 1/6. Whenever friendly minion dies, gain +1 attack. This is very akin to Darkshark Councilman that saw play way back in Warlock, actually, years ago. And it's kind of got, I mean, it's pretty much exactly the same effect, except that it has more health. Importantly, you can also play this, and because of the fact that we have rushers in the deck from Coordinated Strike, from Ram Commander, from Renowned Performers, you can play this on 3, rush the next turn, and then after those minions die, you can attack face on turn 4 with this. So you can set this up even with 6 health. It's pretty hard to kill on turn 3, honestly, by any class. So it's very likely to stick, and then you can take advantage of that. Or you can already take advantage of it if you had a board beforehand, which is really nice. Flag Runner, Renowned Performer, and here is where the deck's kind of weird. You could add a bit more mid-game, but I feel like you want some consistency, and because of that, I'm adding Skull to have some extra card draw. We have Studies in here as well, and Studies can get you card draw as well, but I do think that there needs to be some sort of card draw on the deck, because I think you could run out of value a little bit if you get, if your initial sort of push gets wiped. I think it could be difficult to close out games. Another one of the payoff cards. Crutcher's Demon Render. This is a hero card. 6 mana. Battlecry, summon 2 1/4 demons with Rush. These are called Fellbat Shriekers, and they are improved by the number of times that your hero has attacked this game. And this is one of the reasons to run a few weapons that cost 1 mana. You get a few swings in, so by the time you play Kurtrus, each weapon swing will increase the attack of each Fellbat Shrieker by 1. So if you've swung 3 times by turn 6, these become 3 mana 4 rushes, which are pretty good. They can probably kill stuff, and if you're still ahead on board, they're just developing 2 3 mana 4/4s, for example, which is insane. On top of that, your hero power changes. Hero power +2 attack this turn. After a friendly minion dies, after a friendly minion attacks, not dies, refresh this. Which means that cards like Coordinated Strike, Expendable Performers, basically whenever you have a bunch of stuff on the board, you can go hero power, gain 2 attack, attack with one of your minions. Hero power gets refreshed, get another 2 attack, attack with another one of your minions. So it can end up being a lot of damage, and this is one of the reasons why we're running Fellfire Deadeye. This is great on curve, but paired together with the hero power means that you can just 0 mana hero power, attack with as many things as you want. And the cool sort of wombo combo here is Fellfire Deadeye, post quest completion, quest completion. Post Kurtrus, you have Felfire Deadeye and an Expendable Performers. You have 12 Illidari die, and you basically do 24 damage with the hero power, which is pretty cool. I think Expendable Performers might be a bit too slow to run multiple copies of. Again, this is gonna require some testing to see how it sort of plays out, but I think having one is probably fine. I've also included 2 copies of Fell Guardians. I'm not sure about this either. You could maybe cut one of these for either some more early game minions, but I feel like with the amount of tokens that you are generating right now, it might be fine to just have this naturally run in the deck. This was not new, but it hasn't really been seen. It hasn't really seen play. So it's 7 mana, summon 3 1/2 demons with taunt, and it costs 1 less whenever a friendly minion dies. This does not upgrade. This does not get discounted while it's in your deck. So this is only while it's in your hand, and that's the reason I'm kind of skeptical about it. It might end up being not great as a sort of late game draw, but if this starts, if this pops up into your hand by turns like 3, 4, or 5, it should be kind of okay. And even as a top deck, it's not the end of the world. You buy yourself time because it sets up 3 taunts if you need just a little bit more damage to close the game out. So yeah, this spawns a bunch of stuff. It gets discounted because a bunch of stuff is dying. And having more stuff also contributes to the more stuff that we're doing with the Flag Runner and the Giant, which we're going to talk about next as well. The Urzul Giant. 13 mana, 8/8. Costs 1 less for each friendly minion that died this game, and this does get discounted even if it's in your deck while minions are dying on your side of the field, which means that you can end up top decking this as a 0 mana 8/8 late game, which I think is another good reason to have Skull in your deck, because it's possible by the time you get to turn 6, you outcast the Skull, you play it, this might actually be playable on turn 6 off of the Skull if you've had 7 minions die, which is actually pretty good, right? One of the downsides of Skull, downsides of Skull, but one of the downsides of Skull is you might not have immediate thing to play on turn 6, but you might actually be able to with the Giant, and you might also be able to with Fell Guardians as well. If you have some board presence already, you can Skull, trade a few things off, and then play the Fell Guardians. So that's the deck. It could definitely be cut down a bit more. I think you could cut Fell Guardians and Expendable and go a little more all in on tempo early. I definitely want to squeeze in a second Demon Companion because I feel like having a turn 1 play is very, very useful. I feel like there's enough turn 2 plays, and then after that, the mid game is also kind of weird, but I think between Studies, the Performers, and the Tuskpiercer, you should have stuff to do into like Skull. However, I could totally see cutting some of these cards to have a little bit more consistency in the mid game. And again, this is going to come from play testing a little bit, but I do think a deck similar to this will see play because it seems quite good in what it can do. It has good board presence. You can remove stuff as well because you have rush minions, you have card draw, and you have Kurtrus to kind of close out games with an upgraded hero power. All right, next up. This is actually called Cute Lock, I think in Wild, and this isn't quite as cute as Cute Lock, but the idea of Cute Lock is you're running a bunch of 0 mana, or you're running cheap stuff that you can throw onto the board, and being able to play all of these cheap cute minions lets you run cards like Ritual of Doom, destroy friendly minion. If you had 5 or more, summon a 5/5 demon. So you want to flood the board pretty easily with cheap stuff and then take advantage of cards like that. We have cards like Wicked Whispers, discard your lowest cost card, give your minions +1/+1, which is great when you're flooding the board. Running cards like Fiendish Circle as well for that same sort of thing. 3 mana summon 4 things, which works really well with Ritual of Doom. We have a bunch of 1-drops like a normal Zoo deck. Shipment works quite well as well. You can just play it early on for board, or you can trade it into your deck to upgrade it for later. We're running a couple of eggs, you'll see here, and exactly why we're running the eggs is Desecrated Graveyard. At the end of your turn, destroy your lowest attack minion to summon a 4/4 Shade, last 3 turns. This is one of the new objective cards. Now, this objective is quite nice because, for multiple reasons, it benefits again from running like the cute cards, because on turn 3 you can play Graveyard and play like a Murloc Tiny Fin. Sacrifice it, get a 4/4 instantly. Nice. Let's say you played an egg on turn 2. Your opponent doesn't want to pop it because it's an egg. They don't want to give you a 4/4. Bam. Egg dies, you get a 4/4 from the egg, and you get a 4/4 Shade. And then you have to keep in mind that this lasts for a few turns, so you do have to play to sacrificing another minion every turn until the objective ends. Otherwise, you'll lose your 4/4, which will still get you another 4/4, but ideally, you'd rather just sacrifice something else. So we got some aggressive stuff there. Wicked Whispers to kind of push. Tour Guide for card draw. Villager is fine as well. It works well with Ritual of Doom. It works well with Wicked Whispers, another thing for Desecrated Graveyard, and it adds a Deathrattle for Tamsin's Phylactery. Tamsin's Phylactery, let's talk about the top end. 4 mana spell, discover friendly Deathrattle minion that died this game. Give your minions its Deathrattle. And this also works fairly well with a cute aspect. So, Deathrattle's in the deck. Villager, egg, and that's it. So, over the course of the game, one of these will die at some point, and then when you build a board and it sticks, and even if it doesn't stick, you could just put an upgraded Wicked Shipment with the Phylactery, maybe throw in a Tiny Fin or a Death Imp, and apply Death Rattles to them. Death Rattle, summon a 4/4. Now you have a bunch of small minions that are going to hit your opponent in the head, and eventually they're going to die if they don't deal with your board, but if they deal with your board, now you have 4/4s popping out of them, or you have multiple sets of 2/1s popping out of them. Basically, it's a very sticky board. Sacrificial Summoner is also a minion that has been added in Alterac Valley. 3 mana, 3/3. Battlecry, destroy a friendly minion. Summon a minion from your deck that costs 1 more. Another way to activate eggs, which is one of the reasons why we're running eggs in the deck. Now, if we pop an egg, what are our 3 mana minions that can come out? I have included 2 copies of Blade Master, which seems kind of memey, but it actually kind of makes sense. And then you'll have the third 3-drop the Summoner, because you're playing a Summoner from hand, so you'd have 3 drops left in theory in your deck. So sometimes you draw the other Summoner, which is unfortunate, but still, you pop an egg, it's pretty good. And if you hit the Blade Master, awesome. Finally, I have Drekthar here. Drekthar here, I'm not 100% sure about, but I actually think it makes a lot of sense. Sometimes you high roll and you hit the Blade Master. Sometimes you don't, and you pull small stuff. But if you're playing something like a Graveyard and you play Drekthar, you pull some stuff from your deck, that's pretty good. Chances are, if you pull a small thing, it's going to get popped by the Desecrated Graveyard, so you get a 4/4 anyways. It's a lot of tempo, and it just kind of makes sense. This is a very aggressive sort of deck, so being able to run Drekthar actually just makes sense. You either high roll a big minion, or you have small minions that work together with Ritual of Doom, Wicked Whispers, Graveyard, and again, if you pull an egg with Drekthar, the next turn you could still try doing like a Sacrificial Summoner play. This might need a bit more sort of damage to close out the game. The Blade Masters might end up being memes. Maybe there's some other ways we can identify to use the Summoner with. Maybe there's something better than Blade Masters, but upon looking through the cards, this actually seems like a pretty good place to start for me. You have some pretty good ways to spend mana early. You can work around Graveyard, you work around the eggs. It looks pretty solid. Now, finally, we have Frost Elemental Shaman. I went through a couple iterations here. I had a pure Frost Shaman deck, but it seemed kind of meh. An Elemental Shaman we've already kind of seen, but I think Frost Elemental Hybrid could kind of work. Now let's go through and see what I'm talking about. So, let's talk about the new cards. Wind Chill. 1 mana spell, it's a Frost spell. Freeze a minion, draw a card. Draw a card, cool. Freeze a minion, cool. Other new cards. Sleep. Actually, let's talk about Frostbite first. Frostbite. 2 mana, Frost spell, deal 3 damage. This can go face. Honorable Kill. Your opponent's next spell costs 2 more. So there's a bit of disruption here, which lets you play around some stuff. Maybe like a Soul Rend against the Warlock opponent. You can actually Honorable Kill your own board in theory to kind of play around it, which is interesting as well. And of course, it's burst damage, which is nice too. So it's kind of cool. A bit of disruption there. Next up, Sleepbreaker. 2 mana, 3/2 elemental. Battlecry, add a Wind Chill to your hand, which is the Frost spell we discussed earlier, which freezes a minion, draws a card. This is itself is an elemental, and it's just a minion you can play on too. It's a good way to bridge to something like an Arid Stormer. It gets discounted by Granite Forgeborn. Seems pretty solid. And it gives you card draw, which is good too. One of the downsides, well, I wouldn't even say downsides, but one of the problems with the deck is sometimes you just gas out. But importantly, we can't run Primal Engineer in this deck because most of the spells we're running are Frost. We are still running Serpentine Portals. However, the Dungeoneer is not going to activate that often because of the fact that we have Frost spells in. So because of that, having the Sleet Breaker can help make up for that a little bit. Otherwise, we're running pretty much all the elementals we were before. Important to note that Baron Glacier, the payoff card for Frost, is also an elemental. 7 mana, 6/6, Battlecry. For each Frost spell you've cast this game, summon a 3/4 elemental that freezes. And these are 3 mana, 3/4s, which is pretty cool. How many spells do you need to get off for this to be good? I would say probably 2, especially if this is discounted and this is 6 mana because of the Granite Forgeborn buff or discount. Great. Like, honestly, even something 1 is okay, right? Like, let's talk about a 6 mana 9/10. It's pretty good. And if you summon 2, it's a 6 mana 12/14. Pretty good stats for 6 mana. So that's pretty good. running the Lily Pad Lurkers, Forgeborn, we still have the portals. I have one Marspawn here. You probably don't want Marspawn, it's probably something else, but it's hard to figure out what to come down to. You might even just run like one more Dungeoneer as a card cycle and whatever. Sometimes you just hit the Serpentine portal. Otherwise, the package is very similar. I have Custodians here with a Gavel because this entire deck is kind of Battlecry-ish, which kind of makes sense. It's possible we could cut Gavels and add some more Elementals, but I feel like the Gavels are probably fine. Discounting most of these expensive cards ended up being really, really nice. But I know in current Elemental Shaman, we did end up cutting Gavels, so it's possible that we just get rid of these altogether, get rid of the Custodians, and maybe add a bit more oomph in the deck. But I feel like you might have enough, and I think the damage from the Gavels plus the discounts will be really nice. Bolner, of course, also included because of Battle Cries. You'll see a lot of other similar stuff. We've added Macaw from the mini set as well, because of a large amount of positive battle cries, and the macaws as well just adds to the finishers. Like Baron on 7, that's a battle cry, which means if you hold a macaw because you realize that you're curving out into Baron on 6 or 7 or 5 if you get lucky, you could just play macaw right after. If Baron doesn't close out the game, they have a board clear, bam, macaw, you summon another board. So there's quite a lot of staying power in this deck. Again, 30 cards might not be perfect, but this is a really kind of cool sort of different way to play Elemental Shaman. So those are the 5 decks. We got Deathrattle Priest, Cute Lock, Frost, Elemental Frost Shaman. We have Buff Paladin, and I totally haven't forgotten the last deck. That's what it is. And I don't know, Token Tempo DH. These are probably the 5 decks I'm kind of excited for the most for the expansion. Let me know if you guys like the decks in the comments. We're going to have we're going to have a lot more decks to look at as well, but most of the other decks are probably going to be a little less refined as these ones. I spent quite a bit of time on these. So let me know in the comments what kind of decks you guys are looking forward to. Let me know if you have suggestions for cards that I could change or add for these decks. And hope to see you guys soon. Enjoy the expansion when it comes out.